Trump goes nuts after Jasmine Crockett mocks his failed birthday parade. Trump expected praise for his military parade. Instead, Jasmine Crockett told the truth, and suddenly the whole country was listening to her. Not him. Washington, D.C. had seen big parades before, but not like this. It was June 14th, 2025, Flag Day. Also Donald Trump's 79th birthday. He made sure everyone knew it. The Capitol was sweltering under a heavy summer heat, yet tens of thousands lined Constitution Avenue for what had been advertised as a celebration of the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. But something felt off. Tanks rumbled down the avenue, shaking windows. Helicopters flew in tight formation. Overhead high school bands, some awkward and out of sync, tried to fill the dead air between military units and a long stretch of armored vehicles. Spectators clapped, but there wasn't much cheering. People squinted into the sun, sweat rolling down their necks, unsure what they were really watching. It was expensive, loud, and strangely hollow. Veterans groups had been split in the weeks leading up to it. Some had supported the idea. Others questioned the purpose, especially when the cost ballooned to over $45 million hotel rooms across D.C. had been booked for campaign donors and out-of-town influencers who had no connection to the military. A number of retired generals reportedly declined to attend. The parade didn't feel like a salute to soldiers. It felt like a salute to one man. At the heart of it all, riding slowly in a modified golf cart painted gold and red, sat Trump. He waved, grinned, and saluted. At cameras surrounding him were carefully placed aides and loyalists. Military protocol had been tweaked to allow for this staging, something that didn't sit well with active duty officers, many of whom stood stiffly on the sidelines, unsure how to react. That's not what we signed up for. A young Marine sergeant told a reporter from a local station. He didn't give his name. This doesn't feel like honoring service. This feels like a show. There were crowds, sure, but they weren't all friendly protesters. Gathered at several intersections, many held signs that read, "Honor vets, not egos and housing parades." Some had brought photos of homeless veterans. Others stood silently with American flags held upside down, a sign of distress. One group staged a visual protest by dressing in camouflage and sitting motionless on the ground with cardboard signs listing mental health struggles and suicide statistics. People walked by, slowly, some stopped, some didn't. But it was clear their message landed when reporters asked White House Press Secretary Marianne Tisdale about the cost and purpose of the event. She brushed it off. "This is a beautiful celebration of our troops and our nation's strength." She said, "Any criticism is just political noise. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Local businesses along the route complained that foot traffic wasn't what they'd expected. Others were told to board up their windows ahead of time in case tensions escalated. And among average citizens, there was a quiet confusion. Why now? Why like this?" That night, mainstream media ran footage of the parade, followed by hours of panel discussions questioning its necessity. Independent outlets were less restrained. A viral YouTube clip titled "The Emperor's Parade" showed Trump waving, while a narrator sarcastically described each vehicle like, "It was a circus act. Millions watched it within 24 hours. People had questions, but they didn't have to wait long for someone to answer them. But not everyone kept their thoughts to themselves. And that's where things really took off. 3 days later, the buzz hadn't died down. Cable news was still dissecting every angle of the parade, its cost, its optics. Its meaning right-wing media praised the show of strength. Progressive hosts called it a distraction. But for many Americans, it all felt like noise until Jasmine Crockett spoke. The Texas congresswoman, known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense delivery, was scheduled for a standard sit-down on MSNBC's Afternoon Ledger. The producers had slotted her in to comment on rising inflation numbers, but just before the segment wrapped, host Keisha Bramwell asked her off. "Script Congresswoman, before we let you go, any thoughts on the parade this weekend?" Crockett smiled, then leaned forward almost like she was deciding whether to answer. Then she did. That wasn't a military tribute, that was a birthday tantrum with tanks, she said, calm but firm. "We've got veterans sleeping in tents under bridges, and this man wants us to clap while he plays emperor in a golf cart. It's not patriotism, it's performance." The studio went dead silent. Bramwell blinked, visibly surprised, but Crockett didn't flinch. She thanked the host, gave a small nod, and the feed cut back to the newsroom. By the end of the hour, that clip had made it to Twitter. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Tantrum parade started trending, before midnight right behind it, as commander and petty and golf cart. General, millions of people from teachers in Pennsylvania to veterans in Texas reposted Crockett's remarks with comments like, "Finally someone said it, and I've been waiting for this energy." Late night shows picked it up immediately on the Firehouse. host Glenn Marks opened his monologue with a screenshot of Trump in his parade cart and quipped, "Nothing says strong leader like a man who needs shade while soldiers march in full gear." The audience roared. Then he played Croquet's clip twice by the next morning. Even international media outlets were airing the moment British tabloids dubbed her the American politician who threw hands with words. A Canadian news anchor simply said that was brutal and deserved. But it wasn't just the jokes that spread. It was the feeling behind them. People were frustrated for months. The cost of living had been rising. Rent was up. Grocery bills were tight. And while many respected the military, they couldn't stomach watching tens of millions spent on a political birthday parade while real problems festered. Crockett's words hit a nerve because they sounded like something regular people might say at their kitchen tables. Unfiltered, honest, a little bit angry, but not performative. It felt real in Omaha, Nebraska. A 53-year-old veteran named Craig Hodges posted a video on Facebook. "I served 2 tours. I'm proud of it," he said, staring into the camera. But that parade wasn't for us. That was for one guy's ego. And Congresswoman Crocker, she told the truth period, the video was viewed over 6 million times by the end of the day. Meanwhile, Trump remained silent for 24 hours. A rare pause, sources close to him told reporters he was fuming, according to one leak from inside Mar-a-Lago. He had watched the clip over and over again and called Crocker. Another Maxine. Waters wannabe? Aides tried to downplay the backlash, calling it a social media blip, but even Republican strategists were uneasy. The clip had managed to do something many soundbites couldn't cut through the noise and land a real blow, not just on Trump, but on the whole charade in Crockett. She went to bed that night, unaware of the storm. She just ignited her staff told her the numbers in the morning. Her response was simple. "I didn't say anything special. I just told the truth, but truth has a way of echoing, especially when someone tries to silence it." The silence didn't last. On the morning of June 18th, just before 9:00 a.m., Donald Trump finally broke. He posted a furious string of rants on Truth Social. The first was a jab at Jasmine Crockett's intelligence. The second accused her of hating the troops. By the 5th post, he called her a disgrace to Congress and claimed she was spitting in the faces of real patriots. The all-caps format was back. The exclamation marks multiplied, and just like that, it was on cable news. Scrambled breaking, Trump responds to Crockett flashed across screens before producers even had time to cue up the tweets. Hosts read them aloud, pausing in disbelief. One anchor on a morning political show in Phoenix stopped mid-sentence and said, "He's clearly rattled." That afternoon, Trump took the fight public again, this time in front of a live crowd. It was a campaign-style rally in Macon, Georgia, held at a community college football field. The stage was decorated with oversized American flags and a giant LED screen. Looping footage of the June 14th parade, thousands of supporters had shown up, some in military-style hats, others in matching Trump 2024 shirts for the first half of the rally. Trump stuck to his usual script border, Biden inflation, but about 25 minutes in the tone shifted. He squinted at the teleprompter, waved it off, and leaned into the mic. "You all seen that congresswoman from Texas?" He asked the crowd. "What's her name again? Jasmine something?" "Yeah, Crockett. Jasmine Crock. Pot." Laughter, boos, shouts. She gets on television on one of those fake news shows, and she mocks the parade. Our parade says, "I was in a golf cart like some emperor." Well, guess what, folks? I earned that cart. The crowd cheered, but it wasn't thunderous. More scattered than usual, Trump continued anyway, pacing the stage. She thinks she's clever, thinks she's tough. But let me tell you something. We've had enough of these angry low IQ radicals trying to tear down America's greatness. She doesn't care about the military, she cares about TikTok. Views, he kept going. 8 minutes, 9, nearly 10. On Jasmine alone behind the scenes, some of his own advisors were uneasy. A rant like that targeted personal mean. Spirited could energize his base, but it also had a cost, and they knew it. The next morning, journalists asked Crockett's office for comment. She didn't respond immediately, but her silence wasn't passive. She waited until the weekend. On Sunday evening, Jasmine Crockett appeared on State Watch, a political show, known for letting its guests speak freely. The host, Calvin Reiner, didn't mince words. "Congresswoman, the former president spent almost 10 minutes attacking you in Georgia. Do you care to respond?" Jasmine looked calm, unbothered. She spoke slowly. "You know what? I noticed," she said, "he never once answered what I said. Not once. He just shouted name called, tried to humiliate me. But here's the thing, I don't scare easy." Then she leaned forward and said what millions at home were waiting to hear. He called me angry. Maybe I am angry that we're spending millions on tanks while families are choosing between rent and groceries. Angry that veterans are ignored until it's photo op season. Angry that we've normalized nonsense. But guess what? I'd rather be righteously angry than proudly delusional. The clip spread just as fast as her original remark. Even faster, some said social media lit up. Again, the hashtags returned. One post on X read, "Jasmine Crockett isn't backing down. She's dragging truth across broken glass and still walking." Meanwhile, Trump's team released a statement, trying to reframe his rally remarks. She disrespected veterans. The statement read, President Trump was simply defending their honor, but veterans organizations had started speaking for themselves. And not all of them were siding with Trump. A national group of posts, 9/11 veterans, posted a blunt response. "We didn't feel honored, we felt used." Crockett said what a lot of us were thinking. The mood was shifting. Trump had meant to bury her under mockery and rage. Instead, he gave her a platform, but Jasmine wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Tuesday morning came heavy with tension. C-SPAN's cameras were already rolling as Congress convened, the hum of activity cloaked in anticipation. People weren't just watching legislation that day. They were waiting to see if Jasmine Crockett would respond on the record. In the chamber, face-to-face with some of the same people who had stayed silent, while Trump lit her up, she didn't rush it for most of the session. She remained quiet, taking notes, listening. But just after 1:15 p.m., she rose from her seat. The chamber fell still, not completely silent, but quiet enough for the change in tone to register. She had requested 5 minutes to speak on the floor, and she walked to the mic with the kind of presence that made people lift their eyes from their phones. There were no theatrics, no raised voice, no finger pointing, just Jasmine. "I wasn't planning to say anything," she began her voice. But since I've been dragged through every media outlet in the country for having an opinion, I think it's only fair. I speak plainly right here, where the record counts a few murmurs, a shuffle of papers." She didn't break stride. "I stand by what I said, every word, and not because it was catchy or because it went viral, but because it was true. We spent $45 million on a parade that didn't bring comfort to a single veteran. Sleeping on a park bench, we applauded gold-plated golf carts and called it patriotism. That's not love for country, that's theater." Some of her colleagues leaned back, arms crossed. Others kept their heads down, typing a few. Republicans exchanged glances, unsure if they should be offended or impressed. She continued, this time softer. "I've talked with mothers who can't afford insulin teachers buying paper towels with their own money, and veterans who haven't had a proper mental health checkup in 5 years. They didn't ask me to be polite about waste. They asked me to fight it." Now the mood was shifting. Jasmine looked straight ahead, no script, no teleprompter, just 5 minutes of truth. "If calling out a 45 million vanity parade while our veterans go, unfed, makes me radical, then I'll wear that like a badge because I wasn't sent here to smile for cameras. I was sent here to serve people who don't have parades, people who are invisible until election season." By now, most of the chamber had gone completely still. Even her usual detractors stopped fiddling with their phones. She wrapped up the last few sentences with clarity. Not anger. This country wasn't built on parades. It was built on truth service and accountability. And I will not apologize for demanding all three. She stepped away. No grandstanding, no gesture. Just her seat, waiting quietly behind her as she sat down. There was no thunderous applause. This was the House floor, but a slow ripple of nods moved through the Democratic side and from the far end of the chamber. An older representative from Utah, a Republican, gave the smallest of acknowledgments. He didn't clap, just dipped his chin, once then returned to his notes outside the chamber. Reporters were already typing. Social media exploded again. Hashtags that had cooled down reignited within minutes. Shan, truth, not tanks and hash bash. Croquet was right shot to the top of trending topics. More importantly, something had shifted in the tone of the coverage. Jasmine was no longer the feisty congresswoman or the social media moment. Now people were calling her the most composed voice in chaos and the one who kept it real when everyone else was playing defense. Even conservative journalist Andy McRae tweeted, "I don't agree with her politics, but she just handled that moment with the kind of composure we rarely see in politics anymore that matters." In those 5 minutes, Jasmine Crockett turned a political hit job into a moment of clarity, one that echoed far beyond the House floor. But outside those marble walls, the rest of the country was just starting to tune in. By Wednesday, something had cracked open the clip from Jasmine's House floor. Speech made its way into living rooms, group chats, break rooms, and car rides. It wasn't just the content. It was the way she said it. No notes, no yelling, just straight talk. Something about that 5-minute speech stuck with people. It felt familiar. It sounded like someone who actually listened for a living. Morning radio shows replayed the audio between weather reports and local traffic hosts, who usually avoided politics, couldn't help but comment. On a station in Des Moines, the midday DJ said, "I don't care what party she's in." That lady made sense across the country. Crockett's name started appearing in headlines that weren't asking who is she anymore. Now they were saying she might be next. It wasn't just media attention, it was momentum. Her office received hundreds of calls in one afternoon. Her staff posted a screenshot of their inbox. 427 unread messages, all titled, "Thank you." A teacher in Spokane sent an email that read, "You gave words to what I've been feeling for years." A former Marine in Arizona wrote, "You didn't disrespect us. You finally spoke up for us, and it didn't stop there." Jasmine appeared on The View. 2 days later, the producers tried to prep her for heat. Some of the panelists weren't friendly, but it didn't matter. She walked out in a plain navy blazer, no flashy jewelry, and sat with her hands folded. When asked whether she regretted her comments, her response was quick. "No, because I know the difference between honoring service and exploiting it. That parade wasn't about the Army. It was about one man's obsession with looking powerful. And the only people who seem mad that I said it are the ones who helped plan the spectacle." The audience clapped. A few panelists exchanged glances, but didn't interrupt. Jasmine didn't blink by the end of the show. Their social media manager said Crockett's clip was outperforming every guest that month. That same weekend, CBS aired a sit-down interview with her. The segment included a walk and talk along the National Mall. The host asked her what kept her grounded during the backlash. She paused, then smiled. "My grandma used to say, if you are not upsetting the right people, you're not doing the right work." I think she'd be proud that one quote turned into t-shirts overnight. A CNN poll released Sunday night showed a 12-point jump in Jasmine's favorability among independents, in fact, among swing voters under 40. She pulled higher than most senior Democratic leadership. She wasn't just trending anymore, she was resonating. Political analysts began floating her name in unexpected conversations. "She might not want higher office right now," one strategist said on air. "But if she keeps talking like this, voters might not give her a choice." Even some Republicans were shifting their tone, not publicly but quietly. A few staffers from conservative offices were overheard in D.C. cafes, admitting she killed that speech. One aide whispered to a reporter, "I don't agree with her politics, but I'd trust her to tell me the truth." It wasn't just the usual talking heads weighing in. Either college students started organizing watch parties. To break down her speech for civic engagement classes, an elementary school teacher in Kansas had her fifth graders write letters about what they thought leadership looked like. 6 of them wrote about Jasmine, and while all this was happening, she stayed quiet online. No victory laps, no back and forth with trolls. Just one pinned message on her feed. "We need fewer parades and more policies. I said what I said." That line became a magnet for people who had felt invisible. Teachers, nurses, veterans, single moms, union workers. They saw themselves in her. It wasn't because she was perfect, it was because she was human. But behind the momentum, few knew much about the woman who had just shaken up the conversation that was about to change before the headlines, before the viral clips, before the House floor speech that lit up the country. Jasmine Crockett was just a kid from Texarkana with a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who taught her to speak up, even when it was uncomfortable. She wasn't born into politics. She grew up around people who didn't trust it. Her childhood was steady but tough. Her mother, Latrice, worked early mornings at a diner and cleaned office buildings at night. Her father, Dwayne, was a warehouse supervisor who spent weekends fixing neighbors' cars. Neither of them had college degrees, but they believed in education like it was religion. The house was full of library books, and Sunday nights were for debates over dinner. Everything from church sermons to whether the city needed more stop signs, Jasmine learned early. You don't raise your voice. Unless you know what you're talking about in high school, she ran track fast, but not the fastest. Her real skill was in argument. She joined the debate team junior year and never looked back. Her coach, Mr. Reddick, still tells the story of how she won a statewide championship with nothing but a 3-minute rebuttal and a binder full of handwritten notes. Law school came. Next, Thurgood Marshall. School of Law in Houston, she was broke, working nights at a call center, often falling asleep with her laptop open, and a half-eaten taco beside her bed. But she pushed through when she graduated. She went straight into defense law, public defender work. That's where the steel was forged. She saw things in those courtrooms that don't make headlines. Kids shackled for shoplifting, mothers weeping over technical violations, police officers who lied and smiled while doing it. She learned quickly how to keep her expression flat, how to speak fast and clear before the judge's patience ran out. I didn't get into law to get rich. She once told a local journalist, I got in because someone needed to sit across from those kids and tell them the truth and then fight for them. Anyway, her reputation grew in Dallas. Not flashy and not polished, but real. She ran for state office in 2021, narrowly, then jumped to Congress in 2022, when a seat opened up. Most thought she'd be a backbencher. Too green, too blunt, too different. But she knew how to navigate rooms where people underestimated her. She'd been doing that. Her whole life, staffers say she runs her office like a courtroom. Strict but fair, she expects results, not excuses. She doesn't do fake smiles or dodge questions. And she answers her own phone sometimes, especially when it's her district, calling her chief of staff. Andre Billings tells a story that's never made it to the press during the power outages last year. Her office was flooded with calls. I told her we didn't have enough resources to help everyone. She looked me in the eye and said, then find the ones who can't speak up and start with them. That's who she is. That's why when she stood on that House floor and delivered her speech, it landed differently. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't calculated. It was someone who'd spent years watching people get ignored, finally saying it out loud, where it mattered. People felt it. Not because she used big words or fancy phrases, but because she spoke like someone who's walked through the same fire they have back in her home. District people weren't surprised by her tone. A barbershop in Lancaster kept replaying her MSNBC clip on the shop TV. That's Jasmine, the owner, said to anyone who asked. Ain't nothing new, and her old debate coach, he kept a clipping of her front page photo in his classroom, pinned right above the whiteboard, next to a sign that read, if you can think you can fight back. Jasmine Crockett never set out to be a national voice. She set out to speak. Plainly. The country just happened to be listening this time, but the more attention she got, the louder her opponents became, and they weren't playing fair. The internet doesn't argue, it escalates by the time Jasmine's name had landed in headlines. Coast to coast, her inbox wasn't just filled with thank yous anymore, it was crawling with threats, racial slurs, fake photos, anonymous messages warning her to watch her back. The kind of stuff people say when they think distance and fake usernames make them invincible. It started with right-wing blogs, the kind that sit just outside the mainstream. One ran a grainy photo of her at a college party in the early 2000s, claiming she had ties to radical organizations. Another pulled quotes from her public defender, days out of context to paint her as anti-police. Then came the YouTubers influencers with titles like Woke Alert, Jasmine Crockett Hates America. And she thinks she's better than you, racked up millions of views by twisting her words into clickbait. It wasn't journalism, it was targeted character demolition. Some claimed she was funded by foreign governments. Others said she staged her House floor speech with the help of Hollywood consultants. A few even tried to spin conspiracies that she was a plant from deep state operatives. And yet, despite the mess, she didn't flinch. Still, her team took precautions. They changed her personal cell number. Her mother was moved temporarily to a relative's house outside of Fort Worth. Capitol, police increased her security detail. They'd seen this before. Viral attention turns dangerous fast. One morning as Jasmine walked through the underground tunnel toward her office, her aide Ashanti tapped her phone and said quietly, "You've been doxxed." Jasmine stopped mid-step. "They posted your home address and your parents." It's all over one of the Reddit boards. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just nodded and said, "All right, then we keep moving." But inside she was boiling. It wasn't fear. It was rage, not for herself, but for her mother, for the people who now had to look over their shoulders because she told the truth on live TV. She called her father that evening. He picked up on the second ring. "I'm fine, baby," he said, before she even asked, "Don't you dare slow down." She didn't. If anything, she leaned in harder. A week later, Jasmine held a press conference. Not flashy, not on the Capitol steps, just a small podium in front of her district office in Dallas, surrounded by about 30 constituents and 3 reporters. I've been called every name you can imagine. This week she began. Some of them old, some brand new. None of them are going to stop me. She held up a stack of printed threats. These, they don't scare me, because you can't scare someone who's already walked through fire. Then she held up another stack. Letters from veterans. These are why I said what I said. And if you think 10 fake photos and a few angry trolls are going to shut me up, you've got the wrong woman. The clip didn't trend as fast as her first remarks, but the people who watched it, they felt something deeper. Respect, loyalty, a sense that maybe this wasn't about politics anymore. It was about honesty. She started getting calls from unlikely places. A retired Army colonel from San Diego left a voicemail. "I didn't vote for you, probably never will. But you've got guts, and I respect that." A Vietnam vet in Boise sent a handwritten letter. thanking her for saying what so many others were too scared to admit on air. And one night after a late committee session, as Jasmine walked out of the Capitol, a young officer in uniform passed her slowed and said under his breath, "We heard you. Not all of us agree with the parade. Either keep talking." She didn't reply, just gave a slight nod, because while the attacks were loud, the quiet support, the handwritten letters, the hushed words in hallways, the emails that started with, "I never do this," but meant more. But it wasn't until the veterans themselves stepped into the light that everything changed. It started with a single post. On a quiet Friday morning, a video appeared on a community Facebook page out of Bakersfield, California. The man speaking was in his late 50s, sitting on the tailgate of an old truck. The American flag waving gently in the background, he introduced himself. Plainly named Leo Garrison, retired Army Gulf War II tours. "And I've got something to say." His voice wasn't polished, his shirt was a little wrinkled, but his words hit like a drum beat. "I saw that parade, watched it from home, with my granddaughter, and I'll be real with you. It made me sick. That wasn't a tribute, that was a circus. And when Congresswoman Crockett said what she said, I felt seen." He paused, swallowed hard. "Some of y'all are acting like she spit on a flag. She didn't. She spoke up for the people who actually wore the uniform, the ones who come home and can't get a dentist appointment for 6 months, the ones sleeping in tents in Phoenix because their claims keep getting lost. I'm tired of being used for photo ops, and if a black woman from Texas has the guts to say it out loud, I'm backing her by nightfall." Leo's video had been shared over 500,000 times. Then a million local news picked it up, national outlets followed, and that opened the floodgates. Veterans from every corner of the country began posting their own stories, some angry, some measured, all powerful. A former Navy officer in St. Paul spoke into his webcam from his kitchen table. "I served during peacetime, that parade that wasn't about honoring us. That was about boosting one man's ego." Jasmine Crockett didn't lie. She just broke the silence. A woman in Savannah, Georgia, retired. Air Force single mother, wheelchair user, posted a thread about her experience trying to access disability benefits. "I didn't cry when Jasmine spoke, I exhaled, finally." Someone said, "What I've been screaming into the void for years." Mainstream media scrambled to keep up. CNN aired a segment titled, "The Veterans Respond," featuring interviews with 4 former service members, all echoing the same message. Respect isn't bought with tanks and pageantry. It's earned through action. Even the American Legion released a carefully worded statement, acknowledging mixed reactions to the parade and praising leaders who advocate for real, tangible support for veterans' needs. That line, real tangible support, wasn't accidental. They were walking a line, but the message was clear. Crockett was gaining ground. And not just with progressives, this was deeper. Personal veterans groups that rarely got involved in public debate were now holding town halls. One group in Mesa, Arizona, posted a flyer. "Let's talk about what patriotism really means." In it, Jasmine Crockett's name was front and center. Meanwhile, Trump tried to reclaim the spotlight. He posted another string of rants accusing veterans who supported Crockett of being brainwashed by leftist media. He questioned their service, mocked their sincerity, and called one disabled vet a professional victim. That post backfired hard. A day later, a CNN anchor read Trump's statement on air, then paused and simply said, "This is what we've come to, mocking the people he claims to support." Support for, Crockett surged again. Her office released a short statement. It didn't mention Trump by name. "We hear you. Oh, we believe you. You should never be used as props or dismissed when you speak. You deserve dignity, not decoration." That was it, simple, sharp, human. The press reached out for more, but Crockett stayed quiet. Her team said she wanted to give veterans the space to speak without turning it into another media cycle about her. It worked. Her restraint was noticed, and across the country, people who had never voted in a midterm, who didn't know their representative's name, were now watching C-SPAN clips and asking real questions in a VFW hall in Dayton, Ohio. An old Marine named Sherman leaned back in his chair and said to his buddies, "I never thought I'd say this, but she might be the only one talking straight these days." But even with all this rising support, it was a quiet moment, with a stranger that reminded Jasmine why she started speaking up in the first place. It was supposed to be a routine stop. Late July, the Texas sun. Unforgiving Jasmine was back in her district for a community forum in Denton. Nothing fancy, just a rec center gymnasium with rows of plastic chairs, warm bottled water on a folding table, and a few worn banners from local civic groups. The room held maybe 60 people. No press, no handlers swarming around her, just residents with notebooks, questions, and plenty of opinions. Jasmine liked these stops. They felt real. No lights, No spin, just face to face. She took questions about housing veterans, claims public transit gaps. She answered them all calmly, sometimes with frustration, always with clarity. Then came a pause. An older woman in the back, standing alone with her cane, cleared her throat. "I don't have a question," she said. "Just something I need to say." The room quieted. Jasmine turned her full attention toward her. "I voted for Trump twice. I got 2 sons in the military. I saw that parade and I thought it was a mess. I didn't say nothing to nobody, 'cause I didn't want to cause a fight." She took a breath. "Then I saw your clip on the TV. You said the thing I was thinking, but didn't know how to say." The room stayed still. A few people lowered their eyes. Jasmine stepped off the stage and walked toward her slowly, as if to make the moment less formal, less distant. "I'm not here to praise or criticize," the woman continued, "but I just want you to know. I heard you, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone in Congress actually saw folks like me." Jasmine stood beside her, didn't interrupt, just listened. "My name's Darlene," the woman added with a small smile. "I still got some questions about your policies, but what you said that came from the gut, and I respect it." For the first time that evening, Jasmine's voice cracked a little. "Thank you, Miss Darlene." She said, "That means more than you know." Someone in the crowd clapped, then another. Soon the whole room followed slow, sincere applause that didn't come from agreement, but from understanding that clip shot by a local high school student on a phone. Ended up online later that night. It wasn't flashy, no edits, no background music, just 2 women, 2 generations, 2 very different experiences, standing side by side and talking like neighbors. It hit harder than any viral takedown. Within 48 hours, national outlets picked it up. Commentators who once questioned Jasmine's methods now praised her ability to bridge divides without selling out the story. Made the front page of the Austin Sentinel under the headline "From Texas." With truth a moment that crossed the aisle. Jasmine didn't tweet about it. She didn't make it part of a campaign ad when asked about the moment. She just said, "I'll always make time for people who come to the table with honesty." What people noticed, what stuck, wasn't just that she stood her ground. It was that she didn't let the fight become her only language. She never stopped listening that night. Her staff found her alone in her hotel room, reading letters, dozens of them. One was from a Gold Star father in Idaho. It read, "I disagreed with you at first, but then I heard you really heard you. Thanks for not talking down to us." Jasmine folded it and placed it in the same folder she kept her grandmother's letters in. It wasn't for the cameras, it was a reminder that her words, when rooted in truth, had the power to cross even the loudest divides. But the attention wasn't going anywhere, and neither was she. What came next was something no one, especially Trump, had expected. By early August, it wasn't just political insiders talking about Jasmine Crockett anymore. It was grocery clerks, Uber drivers, barbers, and substitute teachers. Her words had worked their way into everyday conversation. Not because they were polished, but because they were plain, because they felt like they came from someone living in the same country, facing the same frustration. The media kept trying to make it a boxing match, Trump versus Crocker. But she wasn't playing along when reporters swarmed her after a committee meeting and asked what she thought about Trump's latest insult. Something about her being a loud mouth with 0 class. She just smiled and said, "I'm not worried about a man who needs a parade to feel tall." The cameras caught it. The clip went viral again, but Jasmine didn't stop to celebrate. She stayed focused on her work, co-sponsoring a new veterans' mental health bill, pressing for fair housing in under-resourced areas and demanding answers from the VA on their backlog of care requests. And people noticed during a press briefing, a White House correspondent asked the press secretary, "Is the administration looking at Congresswoman Crocker's recent veteran proposal as a model?" It wasn't a softball, it was serious. Crocker's voice was no longer confined to a viral clip. It was shaping conversations at the highest levels. In September, she was invited to speak at a veterans advocacy conference in Cincinnati. Thousands attended. She walked on stage wearing a simple gray blazer, no teleprompter, no entourage, just her. And a microphone. Her speech wasn't fiery, it was focused. "I don't have all the answers, but I know what questions we're not asking. I know what doors aren't opening fast enough. And I know that if we can spend $45 million on tanks for TV, we can damn sure get a veteran a doctor's appointment in less than 3 months." The crowd stood up before she even finished. Later that evening, someone asked her, "What changed? Why? Now? Why?" She paused, looked out the window of the small airport terminal where she waited for her delayed flight back to Texas. "Honestly, I think people are tired of fake." She said, "They don't need heroes. They need someone who doesn't talk down to them, who doesn't waste their time, who tells the truth, even when it's messy." That night, flying home in coach, with her shoes off and her laptop open. Jasmine responded to emails one by one, no staffer, no assistant, just her. The hum of the plane and the soft clicks of a keyboard back in D.C. Things had shifted. Her colleagues treated her differently now. When she walked into meetings, people paid attention. When she spoke, they listened, not because of fear, but because she'd earned something rare in politics credibility. And Trump, he kept posting. But the fury didn't land the same way anymore. His rants felt louder but hollower. The more he tried to diminish her, the more his audience saw the contrast between someone clinging to power and someone who never chased it in the first place. Jasmine Crockett hadn't planned to become a national voice. She hadn't auditioned for it. She didn't come with flashy slogans or calculated strategies. She simply spoke from the gut. And when the country was spinning, people grabbed onto that. Her story isn't finished, not by a long shot, but this chapter. This moment where one voice pushed through the noise, called out the vanity, and reminded a divided country what accountability sounds like that will stay with people long after the hashtags fade, long after the cameras move on. Because truth when it's spoken clearly sticks. Because people remember when someone dared to call the Emperor's Parade exactly what it was. If there's one thing this moment taught us, it's this: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the truth and let the noise speak for itself. So if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel like maybe we deserve better, don't just watch speak. Vote, show up, because silence doesn't serve anyone, and truth only works if we keep passing it on.